My new stepdad wore his army uniform to Thanksgiving. I called the cops before dessert. When I walked into Mom's house, I saw Kenny sitting at the head of the table in his army uniform for the first time. My aunt grabbed my arm. "Brandon, come meet your new stepdad. He's a war hero. I'd been deployed during their wedding 3 months ago, so this was our first time meeting." Kenny stood up and shook my hand. "Good to finally meet you, son. Your mom talks about you constantly." My uncle handed Kenny a beer. "Tell Brandon about Kandahar." Kenny settled back in his chair with this humble smile. "We were outside Kandahar when the ambush hit and my buddy went down. I ran through enemy fire and dragged him back. That's how I earned this." He tapped the medal on his chest. My aunt had tears in her eyes. "That's the Bronze Star." I cut into my turkey and looked at his ribbons carefully. They were in the wrong order, and the badge above them was upside down. I've worn the same uniform for 12 years, and these mistakes were impossible for anyone who actually served to make. I kept my face neutral and listened as Kenny kept talking. "I got the Purple Heart when an explosion threw me 15 feet and shot shrapnel into my left leg. I woke up 3 days later in a field hospital and I could barely walk. I looked under the table and he was bouncing that same leg." Mom smiled at him like he'd hung the moon. I set down my fork. "Kenny, where were you stationed?" "Fort Jackson." "What was your job?" "Infantry, 11 Bravo." Fort Jackson doesn't train infantry, but I kept my voice casual. "What unit?" "3rd Battalion, 75th Regiment, Charlie Company." Mom beamed. "He was a ranger. Isn't that incredible?" I nodded slowly. "When did you deploy?" "I had 3 tours, 2008, 2010, and 2012. I leaned forward. "Where did you do ranger school?" Kenny took a very long drink. "At Fort Benning in 2009. That was the toughest 8 weeks of my life. That base hasn't been called Benning in years." "I bet. It must have been brutal in that heat." "Yeah, I barely made it through." My aunt refilled his glass. "You're so tough." I pulled out my phone under the table. "What was your rank?" "Sergeant, just like you." "How long were you in?" 8 years. I got out in 2014. I found the Stolen Valor database and searched his name. My stomach dropped as the search results loaded. Kenny Morrison had been reported in 3 different states for faking military service. I pocketed my phone down and waited for dessert. Mom brought out a pumpkin pie, and I waited until everyone had a slice on their plate. "Kenny, did you know badge is upside down?" He froze. "What?" "The badge above your ribbons. The rifle should point to the right, not the left." Mom laughed. "Brandon, don't be rude. And those ribbons can't be together like that. They're from different time periods. You learn this on day 1 of basic." Kenny pushed his plate away. "You're being ridiculous." I stood up. "You said you trained at Fort Jackson, but that's where they train clerks and cooks. Infantry goes to Fort Moore." "Brandon, stop this right now." Mom's voice shook. "And Ranger School? That base got renamed years ago. Anyone who actually went there would know that." I pulled out my phone and turned it around to show him. "You've been reported in 3 states for stolen valor." Mom grabbed my phone and her hands trembled as she read. Kenny looked around at everyone staring. "I just wanted people to respect me," he whispered. Mom's chair fell over as she stood. "You lied to me? You wore that uniform to our wedding." My uncle grabbed Kenny's shoulder. "Were you ever even in the military?" Kenny stared at the floor. "No." Mom was crying now. "Why would you do this?" "Because people treated me different when I wore it. They thanked me and bought me drinks. It made me feel like I mattered." I walked around the table. "Take off the uniform. You didn't earn it." I dialed my phone. "This is Sergeant Brandon Brooks. I need to report stolen valor at my mother's address." Kenny tried to stand, but my uncle pushed him down. "You're staying right there." The cops arrested Kenny at the dining table, still wearing the fake uniform. Mom filed for annulment the next morning. Kenny got 2 years for stolen valor.